Thank you so much for joining us today for the BYU Family History Library webinar series. I'm Marin, and I'll be your host for this webinar. Please make sure that your microphones and web cameras are disabled during the presentation to provide a smooth webinar. Our upcoming webinars are on the 29th of August. That will be with Sarah Stoddard, and that'll be at 3 p.m. Mountain Time. And then we'll be hearing from Kathryn Grant again on the first week of September. That'll be a Thursday at 3 p.m. I will get that schedule of the September webinars all set up and sent in the email this week. And then you'll see the rest of the webinar schedules for September. If you'd like to access a webinar, previous webinar, please visit our webinar index on our website or search on our YouTube channel. All of our webinars are recorded and uploaded the following Monday for your convenience. We also post links to the recordings and other updates on our Facebook page and on our Twitter account. During the webinar, if you have any technical difficulties, you can use the chat box and I'll address your concerns. You can use that chat box as well for comments and insights during the webinar. However, we'll answer all the questions at the end of the presentation. For today's webinar, we're pleased to hear from Kathryn Grant, who will be giving a presentation on using helper resources for Discover, Gather, Connect on FamilySearch. After years on the sidelines, Kathryn started doing FamilySearch and discovered that she loved it. Her specialty is helping new family historians finding success and maybe even avoid some of the mistakes she's made. Kathryn teaches Sunday classes at the BYU Family History Library. She also presents at Riverton Saturday seminars and other family history events. Her column on family history ran in the Nauvoo Times for about a year and is still available online. Kathryn works for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints as a technical writer and as an instructional designer, focusing on usability and process improvement. Besides family history, she loves uplifting music, thought-provoking books, and spring lilacs. And if Kathryn is ready, we'll just turn the presentation over to her.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. We so appreciate you being with us. And this webinar is actually an update to a webinar that we did some time ago on using the consultant planner with Discover, Gather, Connect. The consultant planner has been renamed to Helper Resources, and it's also been enhanced with a lot of new tools. So we will be going over some of those things today. So our little schedule for today is actually just that. It's pretty short. We will do a quick overview of Discover, Gather, Connect just to set the context for what we're talking about. And then we will take a look at the helper resources that support Discover, Gather, Connect and help us provide those meaningful experiences for people that we're helping. So let's do our overview of Discover, Gather, Connect. As you can tell from the name of this approach, it's got 3 different components. But what's interesting is, in my experience, the components aren't really sequential. Instead, they tend to be overlapping and iterative. So you may do certain parts of them at different times and then do them again during the process. And it's very much a reflection of real life, I think, because real life is seldom very tidy and neat, right? It's got glitches and unexpected happenings and so forth. So we just go with it, and family history is exactly the same way. So the first component, well, not necessarily the first, but it's the first in the name of the title, is Discover. And when you think of Discover, I wish that we were in a classroom setting where we could have contributions, but I would just ask you to think in your mind, what do you think of when you think of Discover in terms of family history? Most people will say that they think of things like discovering a fact in a record, or discovering a photo of an ancestor, or perhaps discovering a cousin that you never knew about before. Discovery experiences can be really unusual, even miraculous, or they can be just everyday sort of discovery experiences, but each of them is important. I think of my friend Amy, who, through an interesting series of events, found a box in a room in her house that she hadn't known was there. And it turned out that it contained a treasure trove of genealogical information. Her whole family looks at that as a miracle because none of them remember that box being there. But then I also remember the type of miracle when I discover somebody on a historical record, and that might seem very commonplace and ordinary, but it's just as beautiful as it helps move family history along. So we can discover about our family in many different ways. But once we make those discoveries, we don't want to lose them. And I think that's partly where gathering comes in. So if we find facts on historical records, we gather them. If we find photos, we gather them to a safe place or other heirlooms. We can gather our friends together. We can gather our family to have family home evening, which is living family history. And we can gather people to a reunion or any other kind of get together for the family. All through the process, I think both discover and gather help us connect. So we feel a connection when we look at a photograph or when we find that missing fact in a historical record. We feel a connection when we gather our family together or when we gather photographs or whatever it may be. And then, of course, for those of us who are members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, we find particular meaning in the connection that takes place in the temple with sealing ordinances. So you can see the beauty of this approach, how it kind of creates one great whole that helps us know about our families and be close to them. So, Discover, Gather, Connect emphasizes a few key points. One is that it emphasizes following the Spirit. And that, for me, has been one of the most miraculous parts of doing family history, as it may have been for you, that I don't think anything in my life has taught me as much about learning how the Spirit speaks to me as doing family history. So, Discover, Gather, Connect gives us an opportunity to improve in our ability to hear the Spirit, but it also does the same thing for the people that we help. As we mentioned, Discover, Gather, Connect emphasizes really knowing our families on both sides of the veil. There's a saying that's something like, it's not about the charts, it's about the heart. And I think it actually is about charts. I think charts, so to speak, research and so forth, can help us learn to know people, and that touches our hearts. So the whole point, though, is that we don't want to just stop with names and facts. We want to really get to know our families on both sides of the veil, because especially for those on the other side, one day we're going to see them again. And I kind of suspect, this is just my own theory, but I kind of suspect that we might be surprised when we see them at how well we really know them or how well we recognize them, even if we haven't seen them for a very long time. It also, Discover, Gather, Connect also emphasizes involving youth and children. In a stake meeting I attended recently, we were talking about this, where we're just amazed at the aptitude of even very young children to get involved with family history. My stake high counselor was helping his 10-year-old, as I recall, or maybe an 8-year-old, do indexing, and that child was doing a fantastic job. Now, of course, you want to start a younger child on something more simple. You don't throw them into 17th century German handwriting, right? But simple typewritten records, the child was doing great. My friend Julie helped her 10-year-old son look at birth records and census records. And again, he was doing fantastic at it. So when I hear people say, oh, young children just won't get it, I think we might be surprised. And I think the younger children start getting excited about family history, the more they'll fall in love with it and the greater protection it will be throughout their entire life. Now, Discover, Gather, Connect also emphasizes a good helper, and I'm assuming that's why probably most of you are watching this webinar today. We want to be helpers for those who want to learn to do family history. And Discover, Gather, Connect emphasizes the good helper who prepares ahead of time and provides a one-on-one, spirit-led family history experience. And I'm seeing this in my stake as we do one-on-one family history or discovery experiences, family history discovery experiences with either individuals or families. We're seeing miracles take place. We're seeing people love their families, become stronger in their testimonies, listen to the Spirit better. It's just amazing. I truly believe that Discover, Gather, Connect is an inspired approach that will help us move the work of the Lord forward, particularly with temple and family history. So that is our overview of Discover, Gather, Connect. And I wanted to share this quote that I absolutely love by President Dallin H. Oaks. He wasn't actually president at the time. This quote comes from 1989, but I think it's as relevant today as it was then. Speaking of family history, he said, "Our effort is not to compel everyone to do everything, but to encourage everyone to do something." And I think that's a beautiful way to sum up the purpose of Discover, Gather, Connect. It basically meets people where they are. And as helpers, we can encourage people to prayerfully discover that special contribution that they can make. And I found in working with people in my stake that the Lord really does guide them through the Spirit so that they know what they should be focusing on, whether it's a biography of a deceased family member, or whether it's collecting photos, or whether it's finding names for the temple. And sometimes it changes for people at different phases in their life. They may be directed to do one thing or the other, but we can encourage people to find out through the Spirit what the Lord would like them to focus on, and then they'll have a sense of mission and a beautiful experience as they make that special contribution that they were meant to make. So that is a very brief overview of the Discover, Gather, Connect approach. If you would like more information, we have a webinar that goes into a bit more detail. There's pretty much 3 simple ways to find that webinar. You can visit the BYU Family History Library webinar page that Maren mentioned. You can Google BYU FHL webinars and get our webinar listing, or you can just search on YouTube for the title of this webinar, which is Discover, Gather, Connect, an expanded emphasis for family history. Okay, so now let's take a look at the wonderful helper resources that FamilySearch has provided to support the Discover, Gather, Connect experience. How do you access it? It's very, very easy. If you're a URL sort of person like I am, just type familysearch.org/help/helper in your address bar. Or if you're a person who does better with a mouse and a menu, then on pretty much any Family Search page, just click Help in the upper right-hand corner, and Helper Resources, very easy to find, the last item on the list. So whichever one you do, that will get you to the Helper Resources page, which will look something like this. The first thing that you'll notice is that there are some resources that will help you learn more about family history, and particularly if you've got a calling such as being a temple and family history consultant, it will help you learn more about that. And these resources are updated from time to time. I did want to make one comment, though, about these resources, is that the fact that it says over here, learn about your temple and family history calling, that doesn't mean that you have to have a temple and family history calling in order to use these resources. All you really need is a desire to help and a church account. And as long as you've got those things, you can use these helper resources. So the first thing that you see after you've looked at the helper resources is a button that says Add Someone to the Planner. And you might be thinking to yourself, add to the planner, what does that mean and why would I want to do that? Basically, the helper resources has a section that we can't see right now, but we will in a minute. It has a section of helper tools that you can only use in the context of helping a person. And so what you have to do is add them to the planner, and then as you look at the tools, they're customized to that individual. They show data for that individual. So if you want to add someone to the planner, it's pretty easy. You just click on that Add Someone to the Planner button, and then you get a pop-up menu or a pop-up box that looks something like this. There's two options at the top. If you're trying to help somebody in your ward or your stake, you can search for them in the ward and stake directory. Or if you don't want to search or the person's not in your ward or stake, then you can click enter manually, and then it will just ask for your name, for the person's name, and for their email address. So basically, you just choose whichever option you want, and then you follow the prompts on the screen, and that person is added to your helper resources. When they're added, they will show up here under added or accepted. And so the way that you view them is by clicking added or accepted, and then it opens up a list of yourself at the top and then everybody else that you've added to the planner. So for today's demonstration, I'm going to go ahead and just click on myself, which you can also do. You'll always be at the top, and as you click on yourself, then you get into the tools section, and all the tools will be personalized to you. So here's what it looks like when you get into the area where you can see the helper tools. And you see over here on the left, there are 5 of these tools. And we're just going to walk through each one, not in a whole lot of detail, but enough to get you familiar with it. And then I would just strongly recommend to get in and play around with it, because you can't break anything, and it's a great way to explore and find out what's available. So the Discovery Ideas tool is the one that is shown by default. And you notice over here to the right of the Discovery Ideas button, you see 3 categories of discovery ideas. The first one is family history activities, and we can see those over here on the screen. We've got look at an ancestor's headstones, we've got looking at pioneer ancestors, there's other things like compare a face or looking at memories. In my experience, these activities are a lot of fun, but in some ways they can be distracting, especially if they keep you from focusing on what the person's goals really are. So you probably remember, well, or you may or may not remember from the detailed teaching on Discover, Gather, Connect, that one of the parts of it is that you ask the person you're helping what their goal is. So if their goal has something to do with these family history activities, then this is a perfect way to help meet their goal. But if their goal is something different, for example, finding people to add to Family Tree, something that's not maybe a neat packaged activity, this may not be the way to go. So really, the whole point is follow the spirit. These are useful tools in the right situation, and then sometimes there's other approaches that you might want to take. The next category of discovery idea is hints. I love hints because they can provide a starting place, but there's something really important to keep in mind, and I think it can be illustrated by an email that I got from a user that I had never met before. I was looking for somebody in my family line, and she suggested that I quote, play around and enter in some data in Family Tree, even if I wasn't sure that it was accurate. And she said, that way you'll get hints for this person. The trouble with that is that the way FamilySearch runs the hinting program is that it's not a magic way of just finding, quote, the right hints for the person on that person page. It actually takes the data on that page and finds hints that match the data. So if you put in bogus data, it's going to bring you up bogus hints, because again, all it's doing is finding hints that match whatever data is on that page. I've also seen really bad hints when there's been a bad merge done, and the the information on the page is incorrect for that reason. So just because the hint shows up doesn't guarantee that it's right. So you always want to just do some quick sanity checking. Is it from the right area? One time I got a hint for a person born in England, but as I recall, it was the hint was for someone born in Denmark. And I was like, oh, I don't think so. Maybe I could be surprised, but I don't think that's going to be a valid record hint. So you always want to do some sanity checking on that. But if the hint looks good, then you can go ahead and attach it as a source and be careful to look at the record because it may have some information that you didn't know before. For example, suppose that you found a death record for somebody and you hadn't known their parents. Well, maybe you look at the death record and it lists the parents. So then you've got that additional information. So these hints can be a great way of discovering more things about your family. Finally, we've got the temple section here. And again, I would recommend to verify any green temple names that are listed there. I'll just give you an example. Last night, in preparation for this webinar, just to see what would happen, I checked the list of about 6 green temples that were shown in this temple section for me. The first 2 had pretty serious errors on the page where I could tell that the temple names probably weren't really ready and needed some more checking before I would feel comfortable reserving them. And then there were 3 names shown that I was actually not related to. And to be honest with you, I'm not sure why these temple opportunities are showing names that I'm not related to, because the church policy is that we are wanting to do names for people we are related to. But I did click the View My Relationship button, and I was not related to those people within at least 15 generations, and that's what FamilySearch checks for. So I'm not sure what was going on there, but that's something to be aware of. And then the last one, actually, I didn't check that. After I checked the first 5 and found that they probably weren't names that I'd want to reserve at this point without more checking, then I just wanted to say today, I figured that's what I needed to check on, and just say that if you see green temples there and you'd like to do them, just do some little sanity checking on them. Make sure you're related to them. Look at the page. Make sure there's not any significant errors like bad merges, or one of the most common errors actually is for a person to be christened before they were born. And of course, that can't happen. Other errors that I see sometimes are, mothers having children when they were about 10 or 5 or something like that. Obviously, that can't happen either. And so you just want to basically check on these names. What I found as a state consultant is that very often it's a better experience for a new user to find some fresh, clean names that are missing from Family Tree that you can just have them add. And then that way you're not dealing with cleanup or bad merges or anything. It's just kind of a better first experience for people. As they build skills, it's a wonderful thing to go back to those names that may have some issues and then help them work on cleaning those up. And again, the bottom line is just to listen to the Spirit and do what will best help that person love family history and grow in their skills and abilities to do it. The next option, the next tool that we can use is the tree. And what this does is show a fan chart view of the person's first however many generations. And you can actually control that by the number of generations you click up here. The fan chart is the default view, and I love that. The fan chart is my favorite view. I think mainly because number one, I love the colors. And then number 2, it shows a lot of information in a compact space. So on the fan chart, you've got these different choices of views of the fan chart. You can view family lines. You can look by birth country. You can see people that have sources and don't have sources. So this gives you gives you many different tools to help you prepare that discovery experience for the person you want to help. One thing to be aware of, I tried this. If you click on fan chart, you click on this little arrow here, you get the typical 4 views, the choice of 4 views like you'd actually see in Family Tree itself, the landscape view, portrait view, and descendancy view. But the interesting thing is if you pick any of those other views except the fan chart, you get taken out of helper resources actually into Family Tree. The same thing is the case if you click on any of these names. You get the summary card as usual, but if you click the person's name on the summary card, again, you go out of helper resources and you go to Family Tree. So that's just something to be aware of. The next tool is notes. The interesting thing about this is if you put a note in here, this is basically for the purpose of things that you don't want to forget, but the person who you're helping cannot see these notes. Interestingly enough, though, other people who have gotten permission to help this person can see your notes. So just be aware that these aren't private from other people who may have permission to help the person that you're helping. The next thing is the lesson plan. And out of these 5 tools, the ones I use most for discovery experiences are the tree and the plans. And this plan is actually ingenious, I think, because FamilySearch did some user research, and they found that one of the things that contributed most to a successful discovery experience is um, having a plan. So they found that when people kind of flew by the seat of their pants and just said, "Oh, I don't need a plan," and they went in and just tried to find something meaningful for somebody just on the spur of the moment, most of the time it didn't work as well as when the helper prepared and had a plan. When we say plan, we're not talking about, a 20-page document with links and sources and this real detailed thing. My plans, honestly, are just a short little bullet list of things that I want to remember to bring up in the discovery experience. If you haven't created a plan, this part right here will be empty. You'll have this create new plan, but as soon as you create it, you'll get a form that will allow you to create the plan. What I'm going to do for this demo is show you a plan that I already did. So I'm going to click to open this plan. And be aware that the plan is going to open on a new tab. So the page we were just on is still over here on this tab, but the plan has opened up in a second tab. That threw me actually, because for a few minutes I couldn't figure out how to get back to where I was until I figured out that I had actually opened up another tab. So on this tab, we see the plan for Harriet, and let's just walk through the different pieces of the plan. You give your plan a title, and that, of course, is what showed up on the previous page. There's nothing magical about this. You just, at least I just try and do something descriptive. So for this one, we were finding Harriet Redford's family. You can put the name of the family that you're helping. In this case, it was the Hearst family. And then you can put a description of the area of interest. In this case, or basically their goal. So in this case, I was working with a husband and wife who were new consultants. They wanted to experience firsthand what a discovery experience was like, but they also wanted to find names to add to Family Tree for temple work. So that's what I put down as the area of interest or as the goal for them. The next thing you can do, and this is so cool. I love, I think a lot of us relate to pictures maybe better than we relate to text. And so this relationship path allows us to create a visual that goes from the person, the living person who's having the discovery experience, to the deceased person that the discovery experience is about. So, for example, in this particular discovery experience, I was focusing on a James Redford. And so I clicked Add a Relationship Path, and it gave me a little pop up box that let me put in the PID for James Redford. And when I did that, I got this nifty chart that shows me and it turns out the Hearst that I was helping were cousins. Isn't that so awesome? So both of us were related to this James Redford. So this is a picture of me, or my lineup to to James Redford. But this also would have worked for the Hearsts when I was doing the discovery experience for them, but I didn't get their permission to show their information. So here's my information. Anyway, you can add more than one relationship path, which is really cool if you're focusing on maybe a couple of different people in the family, something like that. And you can also remove relationship paths if you need to. So again, this is just a really great visual way of showing the person how they're related to the person that you're doing the discovery experience about. And then finally, you come down to the outline down here. And I'm so glad they put outline here because, again, you don't want this to feel like an overwhelming experience. I just put a few bullet points that remind me of what I want to talk about in this discovery experience. And just as a reminder, when we're doing a discovery experience, the point of preparing ahead of time and putting these steps in here is not to walk into the discovery experience and tell the person, hey, look what I found. That's not much of a discovery experience for them. So the reason we plan ahead of time as helpers is so that we can get through all those dead ends and those hard to read records or that difficult search, and we can be prepared to guide the person to skip all those dead ends, but still we're guiding them to make the discovery. We're not just walking in and telling them what we discovered, because it's far more meaningful for them to do it than for us to just show something that we found. And you may be asking, well, how do I do that? There, we have a webinar that demonstrates a live discovery experience. It's actually different than the one I showed before, but you can find it in the same way. So you can just look for anything to do with a discovery experience, and that will demonstrate the live one. But just to mention the main way that I do it, it's mostly through questions. So you plan ahead of time, but then you go into the person, say, you know, I looked on your tree and felt prompted to start on this line. How about if we look on, such and such a person? And then how about if we look at census records? Or how would you feel about doing this or doing that? And sometimes they'll say, I'd really rather go this other direction. And then we go that other direction. But a lot of times they're like, yeah, sure, let's look at the census. That sounds great. We bring up the census, and then I'll just kind of guide and say, so what do you think? Does this census look like it is for the person that we've been looking at in Family Tree? So basically, you can just use those questions to guide them to make their own discovery experience. Once you finish the plan, you just click Save up here. And actually, I have to say, the Save button is more of a kind of feel-good button. Because the lesson plan is saved automatically pretty much every few seconds in my experience. So you can click Save just to be certain that it's saved, but probably it will have already automatically been saved. And then to get back where you were before, you just close the tab, and then you click the X to close the tab, and you get back to the helper resources. So now we're ready to look at the last tool, which is Help from Others. This is a really cool tool if you need to plan a discovery experience where you don't have much expertise. So for example, if you were to ask me to find records in Mexico, I haven't had a lot of experience there. Or for this example, we're looking at Canada. Suppose that you've been asked to research in Canada and you haven't done much research, and the person who needs help is in French Canada. Well, what you can do is fill out the form and then click Find Help. I did want to mention one other thing here before we show the search results. When this helper program first started some months back, I had signed up for it, and I think that's why Update Your Profile shows here for me, because if I go in there, it lets me update what languages I can help with, what countries I can help with, areas where I have some experience and expertise. I suspect that if you haven't already signed up to be a helper, but you'd like to, there would be some kind of link or button here that would let you join the helper program. I don't know that for sure because, again, this is what I see when I sign in, but I'm guessing there's a way for you to be added to the program. So if you want to do that, you can. But if you're looking for help, as we are in this example, you fill out the screen and then with the information that you need, and then you click Find Help. And you get this list of results. If anybody in your ward or state has said that they have this expertise that you're searching for, they'll show up here, as will worldwide helpers. In this case, there weren't any, but as the program grows, I rather suspect that more and more people will be showing up as helpers. I did get this very helpful link to 2 online communities that can help with French Canada research. No guided research articles yet, but again, I expect more of those to show up in the future. And then suppose that you also wanted English in Canada. You could change these parameters over here to English, and then you could do Find Help again, and that would update the results over here on the right-hand side. So that completes our review of helper tools, and I hope that that's been helpful to give you an idea of how you can use these tools to provide really great discovery experiences for the people that you're helping. I wanted to close by going over this quote by Mike Sandberg, which I just love. He says, family history helpers seek to apply proven principles to create heart-turning experiences, and those are those discovery experiences for the people they help. These experiences help others love family history and ultimately become saviors on Mount Zion. So thank you for coming to this webinar or watching this webinar today. Hope it's been helpful to you and hope that it gives you some ideas for providing really great discovery experiences. So Marin, do we have any questions that we need to address?
I don't see any questions right now, but the chat box is open in case anyone has any more questions. It does look like we have a few questions. Ramona asks, what were the numbers 34/144 on the right side of the planner? Oh, sorry, Kathryn, you're not unmuted. There you go.
Oh, thank you so much. Hey, great question. The 32 right there is the number of characters you have typed out of the total number 144 that are allowed. So you can't type more than 144 characters in this field, and it just kind of gives you a little progress indicator there, if you will, of how many characters you've entered. Thank you for asking that.
All right, I think that's all the questions we have for this webinar. Our next webinar will be on the 29th of this month, and that will be with Sarah Stoddard. And that'll be at the same time, same place. We hope that you can make it. And there will be an update if you're following us on Facebook, as well as on our email newsletter of the upcoming month's webinars. And you can catch all of those updates by just following us, whether that's our Twitter or our Facebook, or going to our website to join that newsletter in case you haven't. And thank you so much, everyone, for your participation. This webinar will be posted so that you can send it to other people in your community that would like to use these helper resources. That'll be posted on Monday on our YouTube page and on our website. Thank you so much and have a wonderful day.